All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of the Bob Culture Podcast, guys. I'm super excited for this one. I am beyond honored to be joined today by former New Jersey Nets public address announcer and former New Jersey Nets and Brooklyn Nets VP of Public Relations for about 20 years. Just incredible. Currently writer of the Sus Says blog on moresportsnow.com, and also currently director of tennis and women's tennis head coach at Marist. What a resume. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my all-time favorites, Mr. Gary Sussman. Gary, thanks for a few minutes. How are you, man?
Hey, man. Thank you very much for having me. I hope this doesn't crash the podcast, that you'll be able to recover after coming on as a guest.
No.
Well, actually, I am the director of tennis, also the men's coach as well. I'm the men's and women's coach.
What? The resume just keeps going on, man. That good for you. Congrats on that.
Yeah, that's a whole. We'll get into that maybe some, down the road. But that was, yeah. So that's what I'm doing now, and very happy to be with you.
Thank you, man. I'm super stoked to talk to you. Just so many great memories over the years, going to Continental Airlines Arena, then Izod. We had just tremendous players. We had, Jason Kidd, Vince Carter, Richard Jefferson, just highlight real plays. Ian Eagle, Mark Jackson on the broadcast, Jay-Z and Beyonce courtside. We even saw Rihanna at halftime one time. It was ridiculous. And, of course, Gary Sussman bringing life to that arena. I mean, it was just the best time.
Well, when you say bringing life to the arena, I always would tell people that doing games in Jersey was many times being in a basketball library, because the people would just watch it from side to side to side and not really, emote that much unless things were actually, getting very, very heated. But those were great times. My first game that I ever did was in 1992, was Chuck Daly's first game as Nets head coach.
Oh, wow.
That was my first game ever, and I had never done public address before in my life.
Really? Oh, no way. I got you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You may find out stuff here that you had no idea about.
No.
In terms of me being the Nets. That was my first game ever. It was Chuck Daly's first game, and there was, Continental was a big arena, 18,000 people, and it was. I don't recall who the opponent was, but I was very jacked up. At that time, I was the public relations director at Yonkers Raceway, and so that was my full-time job, and we had a television show at Yonkers called Summer Racing from Yonkers, which actually was not a bad show. Jody McDonald, Jody Mack at the track was one of my co-hosts.
Oh, from the fan. Sure, I know Jody Mack. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yep.
And Matt Lachlan was our in the paddock correspondent. He is the Devils play-by-play guy. Worked on the Mets telecast for a long time for Sports Channel. So we had a good crew. The behind-the-scenes people were all top-notch. I mean, big-time directors. And so what happened was that the show was syndicated, and it was on Sports Channel in New York. And the executive producer was Jerry Pissarro. The Nets were on Sports Channel. The Nets were looking for a public address announcer. He said, "Why don't you try out?" So I tried out the first year. I didn't get it the first year.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of politics involved. But I did get it the second time around. And not on a full-time basis. I was able to do all but 12 games, which they had given to the previous announcer. And then the second year, I did all 41 games in exhibition games. But that was my first game ever. It was Chuck Daly's first game.
Wow, that's That's interesting to me because, you know, you're like, oh, I didn't get it the first time around. I'm like, in my mind, and I'm not trying to blow up your ego or anything, best of all time. I've been to different arenas. I've been to Detroit, different places, Madison Square Garden. I mean, you brought so much life and energy, along with the players, of course, but to that arena. I remember reading an article about someone who had done the same, going to all these different arenas around the country for NBA games, and I remember you got it. I don't know if you saw that article. This was many years ago, but they gave you a nice shout. I think it was at IZOD at the time.
It's funny that you should say that about going around to the arenas, because when I joined the Nets in the public relations department, I then traveled with the team. So I also got to hear every public address announcer in every NBA city.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
I would never compare myself to anybody. There was just, everybody had their own style, and
right.
The basic thing is you have to make sure that you present the game so that the players and the coaches and the officials are fully informed of what's going on the court, and also the fans in the arena. And then the other stuff just comes along with it. But so I was like Cy Sperling. I was Cy Sperling was the president and also a member of their club for men.
Yeah.
I was, like Cy Sperling. I was also, the announcer, but I also was fully invested with the team because after a while I was a full-time employee.
Absolutely, and that's interesting. So you gotta see everything, see everyone else do their thing. But again, like I said, you were the absolute best. I loved just like I loved the VC3. I got so excited about that. I think that was even like my text message thing at one time. Your call, every time I got a text message, the VC3 classic. Did you see VC? And I'm sure the players appreciated it. I remember. I know I'm going down memory lane here, but when Vince came back with the Magic and he made that first three on the opposing team, and you did that's a VC and then three, kind of flattened it out at the end, because he was on the other team. I don't know if you remember that. I thought that was a nice touch.
Of course, I remember everything. I remember that game, and I remember Vince looked over at me.
Yeah.
The second one, when I didn't do anything, and I go, dude, the opposing team, I can't do it every call.
Yeah.
I can do it once. But it's very interesting that call, that still resonates with so many people. There was this past weekend, I guess, Vince still playing, which is unbelievable at 41.
Yeah.
So he was in Brooklyn, and someone tweeted out that Ian on the air had mentioned VC3. That Vince had made a VC3, which was very nice of Ian.
Aw, yeah.
And someone tweeted out, and this blew me away. This blew me away. Because I had never, ever mentioned this to anybody, that the gentleman tweeted out that the origin of that started with Derek Coleman, which was a DC3, and he's absolutely correct. He was absolutely correct. Derek Coleman, when he would hit a three, I would say that was a DC3, and it got into some magazine story and so on and so forth, and revived it when Vince came on the team, but not anything planned. It just was organic.
No way. See, I had no idea that the origin story of that. But again, I mean, one of your all-time classics, and you got Vince doing these 360 layups and 360 dunks, and you got the Did You See VC? I always personally like the Mikey Likes It with Mikey Moore. That was a good one. Do they all just kind of come naturally, or do you kind of, like I was going to ask, do you listen to guys like John Sterling and stuff like that? He's always got the home run calls, or do you sit at home and write this stuff down, or does it just come natural?
I never wrote anything down. It was all organic. When we got a guy, or there was a player, I would maybe think about something, but it had to be in the moment. There was only two things. There was one thing I wrote down and one thing that I wanted to say. So the only thing I ever wrote down was at the end of the games, if you remember, I would try to, if it was a close game, I would try to get people up out of their seats. And I would mention certain towns in New Jersey, and I wanted them to all start with, let's say, a P. So I would go from Paramus to, or let's say R. I would go from Ridgewood to Rahway to, you know, and have a couple other Jersey towns and so on and so forth. And I would say, get up on your feet and cheer for the New Jersey Nets. And that seemed to work very well. So I would, at that particular point in the game, I would just write down 4 towns in New Jersey so that I would remember them.
Yeah, I got you.
But that's what I ever wrote down. But the only call that I actually thought of that I wanted to say, I don't know if you probably would be able to guess it, but because when you told me about the podcast and so on and so forth, and I was thinking about these things,
right?
That the only one I actually wanted to say, and it still is one of my favorites, was we had Eddie House on the team.
I remember, sure.
And Eddie was a great 3-point shooter.
Yep.
And again, it had to be. You couldn't just throw it out. It had to all come together and had to be a perfect storm. So Eddie had to have hit a couple of threes, and it had to be a timeout. So all those things had to come together.
Okay.
And one thing I wanted to say was, he would hit the three, and whoever the team was, and I went, like, call 911. The house is on fire.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Love it.
So, but it had to be, in my mind, he had to hit a couple of threes leading into a timeout, so it would be a, timeout, whoever we were playing, or call 911, the house is on fire. And then the guys on the team stood up and they, like, acknowledged and stuff like that. So it was good. It was good.
That's great. And that's my next question. Like, did you get a lot of feedback from the players? Like, I remember, you did the kind of sarcastic VC3 when I think, he obviously smirked a little bit at that. Did you get a lot of feedback from the players along the way?
Well, people don't understand. One of the things that's interesting is that when players are playing, they're focused on the game and their opponents, and they're not really that cognizant of the scorer's table.
Sure.
And so there were many times that there would be, in the middle of the season, a player would come up to me and goes, I don't know you were the PA guy. Now, I work with these guys every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And they have no idea. Now, some obviously were more interested than the others, but they would, put it this way, if they didn't like something, they would say something. The only time that someone said something to me was, if you remember, Boki Nakbar.
Sure, of course.
From Slovenia was on the team. And so when Boki would score, I would go, Boki. And he came up to me at practice one day and he goes, don't say that anymore. I go, okay.
Really? Yeah, okay.
That was it.
Yeah, okay.
I stopped saying it. That was instant feedback,
Yeah.
But besides, they would, Vince obviously was aware.
Oh, sure.
Jason Jason 3-ball side pocket and all
that
stuff.
Of course.
He never really said anything much.
He's probably focused.
Sam Cassell, Clifford Robinson.
Wow, one of my favorites.
I actually, when I would do it, would look over at the bench, and then I would kind of keep my ears open if, I heard a few, chuckles from the crowd, or something like that. Oh,
yeah. Well, I can tell you, firsthand, the crowd loved it. Like I said, never replicated, never duplicated. In my mind, just one of the most exciting times, regardless of how far the team went, just Continental Airlines Arena, Izod, just the best times why I'm a basketball fan today. So really good stuff.
Well, I can tell you that when I first started, I loved doing it because I love basketball, and I had been a a sportscaster. I'd done play-by-play and so on and so forth. But when I became a member of the team in the PR department, it did definitely take on another level for me, because these guys, I knew them. I wanted them to succeed. I was all in. So my level of involvement is a little more than someone who, not saying that anybody who's just does it as an announcer isn't invested in the team. Well, of course they are, because they want the team to win and so on and so forth. But when you actually work for the team and you work with the guys every day and the coaches and the front office, it just becomes a little more personal.
Absolutely. And what does that public relations job entail? Like, is that dealing with the press? I'm sure there's a lot going on with that.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think when I started, I was the director of corporate communications, and then a few years later, I became vice president of PR. And you deal with all the day-to-day media for the players, coaches, and front office, interact with ownership, take care of interviews, so on and so forth. And the only way that I could actually do the PA, because there was another gentleman, I think he worked for Oklahoma City later on, who was in their corporate PR department, who also did PA, but he only lasted a few years. So I'm sure I was along the line whoever did both, who actually did PR and PA. And the only way I could actually do it was because I had a great staff. So if there was any emergencies that came up, like if a player gets injured, you have to go into the back, see what's going on, report to the general manager, tell radio, tell TV, tell the media. So the only way I could do that is I had great staff, and so they would take care of that. But the other part of it is that I was also right there to give my opinion on what should be done. So I had to time manage a little bit over the course of time. But the staff, helped me concentrate on the game. But I remember, this is crazy. I remember one time I was doing the PA, and I got a call from Marv Albert, who was going to be doing one of our games. And I'm talking to him in between calling the players.
Really?
And I'm talking to Marv on the phone, and then I finally told him, I said, Marv, I have to go.
Yeah.
I have to go. So the staff really helped me do that, because, when you're doing PR, you're always on call. So, especially during the game. But for the most part, when you're doing the game, a lot of times you're just monitoring the game, and it's not like you have a million things to do. So if you have a good staff and everybody knows where you are, you're able to pull it off. Because I can tell you that when you stop concentrating on the game, you're bound to make a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a busy man, you got your hand in everything. Now, anyone who listens to New York sports radio or anything like that knows it's a tough market, when it comes to the fans. I mean, we are very critical fans. Like I said, I've been around, I was in Detroit wearing my Vince Carter jersey, like the only one there at a Pistons game, and everybody was super nice to me. They were so nice. And I feel like it's not always like that in New Jersey and New York. Was it like a tough market to work in?
Well, first of all, about Detroit, they have a great PA guy, Mason.
Yes.
Who is he's tremendous. And we used to have great times because, everybody would watch games on League Pass. So the other guys actually knew me when I would travel around. So, not as a PR guy, they knew me as the PA guy. So it was like, it was very cool. But in terms of the market, there was an incident. I was getting killed by Joe Beningo was killing me.
Really?
He was killing me for a call, for some calls that I was making. But when he was killing me, I wasn't the PA guy. Because there was a gap of a couple of years where I wasn't the PA guy. So he was actually killing the wrong guy.
Oh, no. Yeah.
So I actually had to call well, then he then was doing some stuff, but I had to actually call the fan and ask them to cease and desist if they would, because it was affecting.
And it wasn't you.
How management,
Mm-hmm.
was viewing me. But I do remember early on, I think it was still Continental Airlines Arena.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was Isaac. But there was a guy. So I wouldn't give the score out unless the Nets took the lead. But I wouldn't call the score out like it 4-2, 6-4. I wouldn't do that. But if the Nets took the lead at some particular point, like in the third quarter, so on and so forth, and I thought it was apropos, I would give the score. And there was one guy who used to heckle me unmercifully.
Okay.
And screaming for doing that, for giving the score.
Okay. That's
if
odd.
you remember, a lot of times it was not loud at the arena, so you could hear this guy like he was sitting right next to you. And I would never turn around. Never turn around. I wasn't going to acknowledge, and so on and so forth. But then, I don't know if it was the postseason, but it was certainly, I think it was late in the season. I was standing with my back towards the court. The game hadn't started yet, and I make eye contact with the guy, and I just said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "You can't do that. Can't do that." So on and so forth. And then he, I think the next year he stopped being a season ticket holder, so he wasn't in the arena anymore. That was brutal. Was brutal.
There's always no matter what you do, there's always going to be that one guy. Like I said, in my mind, you're first place as far as the public address announcements. Always my favorites, but there's always going to be that one guy. But I can say
can't please everybody.
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
please everybody.
Yeah, right, exactly, ever. But I think I can speak for most of the fans, or definitely a majority of the fans. Like, we all loved you. We loved the calls. Quite frankly, I miss it. But let's talk about some of your favorite memories with the team. I don't know if it would be a particular game or, like, playoff position or just a moment you had. Any favorite moments from working with the team?
Wow.
Anything stand out?
Favorite moments? And it was, I guess, well, obviously, the first practice that Jason Kidd was at when he became a net, and he dove on the floor and slid across the floor in practice. And here was a future Hall of Famer, all-league guy, just laying out. And after that point, you knew that things were going to be okay because they just followed his lead after that.
Yeah.
One of the things that when Jason came on the team is that we got to see greatness each and every day. And, there had been so much losing that I think we really appreciated the winning so much more because there had been so much losing for so long. Even though in 90s, Cal's second year, we went to the playoffs. And, we gave Chicago, we had that first game. We had that first game won. Terry missed a baseline jumper that would have sealed the game. Short jump shot missed it. And we lost in overtime. Jason Williams was playing with torn ligaments in his thumb. He had 23 rebounds and so forth. So, we did make the playoffs. But the Nets didn't have a great reputation. There was a lot of losing. And I think that when the winning came, and you had somebody like Jason, who was just magnificent on the court, and it was just, watching him each and every day was tremendous. And then he would get all these, you'd get all these interview requests and so on and so forth, so that you were now involved in parts of the business that before, when you're losing, no one cares about. Like, even if you're not on national TV, a lot of people don't really have any recognition of the team. And I think that's what cost Jason his first year with the Nets, when I thought he should have won the MVP.
Yeah.
The fact that the Nets were never on national TV, I think, really hurt him, because I know Duncan had a great year and won the MVP, but Jason took a team and a franchise and just carried it on to the Eastern Conference Finals and the playoffs and the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
So come on, that was incredible. So I don't know if there's one or two moments. I mean, those group of guys were great. I would say if I had to list the moments, I would say that when Jason Collins came out, and he was now the first openly gay player to participate in an NBA game.
Yes.
And I was obviously head of PR, and along with my staff and Jason Kidd, who was the coach of the team at the time, Jason Collins, that we were able to pull that off pretty seamlessly.
Yeah.
Both, internally and externally. So I think probably that moment, that ranks pretty high up there. And also Jason Kidd in his Hall of Fame speech mentioned my name, so that was pretty cool.
That's epic. Yeah, that's epic. Like I said, some great moments, and it means a lot to the fans and the players, as obviously you can see. Let's talk about the move to Brooklyn. You know, for me, I'm in the Asbury Park area. I always like that 45-minute drive to the Meadowlands. You know, now it's a little trickier getting into Brooklyn to see games. Obviously, I understand, you know, why they would do it. But it was an interesting time for the team, a transition. What were your thoughts on the move to Brooklyn, and do you follow anything that's going on in Brooklyn right now with some of the younger players?
Well, you know, it's funny that there was a couple of guys, businessmen, who were bidding for the Nets, one to keep them in Jersey and one to move to Brooklyn, which was basically a real estate deal, and has turned out to be a fabulous move from a branding standpoint, from a business standpoint. I think that the fan base for Brooklyn will be, you'll see that maybe in 5 or 10 years when the people who are young now become adults and they start as fans and now their kids are fans and so on and so forth, because Brooklyn's big Knick territory.
Yeah.
So you're not exactly going into, it was almost like an expansion team. I mean, it's the way you had to look at it, but they had brilliant marketing, and the arena has become like, this huge, concerts and boxing and so on and so forth. So, it's become everything that they wanted it to be. I know the people in Jersey would have loved for the team to stay there, but
yeah,
the bottom line was, and there were many, even when we had the great teams those 6 years, attendance was pretty poor. And so New Jersey's a strange place. It's not like a metropolitan area. And people go home, get their kids, come to the game. They're not as crazy as if you go with your business associates to a game after work and then get on the train and go home and so on and so forth. So, I think that Jersey had, tremendous opportunity to take hold of the team. I would love for the team to stay in Jersey. It was much easier for me, from a family standpoint and a community standpoint. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that anybody could dispute that the move from a business standpoint has been just, it'll go down in textbooks when they teach marketing courses about how to market a new product.
Yeah, really, really well said. And just a follow-up, or, obviously I think they had just played the Hawks, and, they had the Vince Carter tribute where Ian had like the little nod to you. Are you watching the games here and there? Are you keeping up with the team at all or anything like that?
It's funny that, I was thinking about that after we had talked initially. Remember what Mariano said, the great Mariano, who I got to meet one time in the hallway outside the locker room at Izod.
Oh, wow.
A little funny story with Mike O'Porin, great net radio broadcaster, assistant coach, Jersey born and bred, and Mike also being a Yankee fan. So Mariano is outside. Mariano was best friends with the team chaplain. So he brought Mariano to speak to the team. And so Mike sees Mariano outside the locker room, and he says, "Mariano, great to meet you. I want to shake your hand, but I'm only going to shake your left hand. I don't want to shake the golden right arm."
Yeah.
It was a hysterical moment.
That's great.
Hysterical moment. Yeah. And Mariano, when he retired, he said that he had no they asked him why he was retiring. He said he had no bullets left. He had given everything that he had, and so on and so forth. And I remember speaking to Jason Kidd. Do you remember when Jason ended his career? It was with the Knicks, and he went like 0 for 10 or 0 for 14, 0 for some ridiculous number of missing field goals in the last several games, and so on and so forth. And he told me, because Jason and I had a very special relationship, so good. I said, "What happened?" He said, "I had nothing left." I had nothing left. And so, in terms of the NBA and the Nets and so on and so forth, I was never a fan. When you make your living at something, it's a little different than just being, let's say, like yourself, paying money, go to a game, investing in the team, so on and so forth. When you make your living in professional sports, it's just like any other profession, whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a musician, so on and so forth. And so now that I'm out of the league, I know what's going on, but I don't make it my business to like read 3 or 4 or 5 stories or have to tune in or so on and so forth. I just, I left it all on the table. I had a great run, and I just look from afar now, and like if Rafa Nadal is playing Federer, that I make time for. But and if Houston's playing Golden State, before I have to go to bed, now I'll watch that a little bit. So I'm not where I used to be in the heyday, watching NBA League Pass, watching every game, all of our games, reading every story, making sure, so on and so forth. When you do that for a living, and then it stops, you kind of pause and just.
I get it. Yeah, really, really well said. I totally get it. I play in a band. I'm not going to be listening to our CD every day. Like I completely get what you're saying. But really well said. So tell us what's going on with Gary Sussman right now. Tell us a little bit about the tennis at Marist and then the blog as well.
Well, so I am the director. Just another organic story that I work for the USTA, United States Tennis Association. I'm the moderator of the press conferences. So I've gone from Jason Kidd and Vince Carter to Roger Federer, Rafa Nadal, Venus, Serena, Andy Murray, so on and so forth.
Wow.
So I was actually taking a break, and I was in the garden at the Open and having some lunch, and I emailed the athletic director at Marist because I've been an adjunct at Marist since 2016.
Okay.
I teach a course in sports public relations. So I emailed him and I said, would you like a volunteer assistant for the women's team? And he said, how would you like to be the head coach? But he was only kidding around. I said, sure. So one thing led to another. I became the women's head coach. And then the men's head coach, who had been here for 18 years, was like John Wooden, retired. And so they asked me if I wanted to take over the whole program because they were looking to rework the program. And so I said, okay. So I became the director of tennis. I did both teams by myself last semester. I finally have an assistant, which now makes it more of a program than me just trying to keep my head above water.
Yeah.
I do backup PA for the Marist men and women's basketball teams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I'm actually doing the MAC tournament in Albany. I'm going to be doing some games. It's a 4-day tournament, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm going to be doing games on Thursday and Friday.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to have to look into that just for old time's sake. That's great.
So I'm like a phoenix who's risen from the ashes. So I see my hand in it. I probably would do some more Marist games, but I have too many conflicts with matches and things like that. So and it's funny. It's funny we're talking today. So I did a women's game. The Marist women's team is actually the team of the most notoriety at Marist as opposed to the men's team. But I was doing a women's game, and they have a girl on the team who's the leading scorer. Her name is Rebecca Hand, Hand, like your hand, left hand or right hand.
No way, yeah.
So I've been very careful, because I've done games in the past, not to give them the A material, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to know your crowd. But anyway, so she drives to the hoop, scores with her left hand. And for a flash, I was going to go, Rebecca with the left hand for 2. But I said, no.
I love it.
I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I didn't do it.
I got you.
Yeah, you got to know your audience and so on and so forth. But,
yeah.
I give them everything else besides that. I just don't go into I don't give them, it's like Sebastian Maniscalco. He's doing Madison Square Garden next weekend. He's giving different material in Madison Square Garden than he may be giving at the comedy club in Lower Paramus.
Right,
like
yeah.
That,
I completely get what you're saying. Yeah, really well said. And I have to ask you, for someone like me, like, honestly, I'm just a drummer out here in the Asbury Park area, playing, great music scene and all that going on. Obviously a sports fan, doing the podcast thing. I'm writing. I'm a little bit of a journalist now. I've had some great interviews. Right. Any advice from you, whether it be, even just being on the podcast or, say someone like me reaches out to the Hawks and I want to interview Vince Carter, not going to happen, but, any advice for people just aspiring to interview people or have some sort of hand in the media? Anything coming from you? Any great golden advice here?
Well, golden is a stretch. If my kids heard this, they would not think so much. But well, first of all, you're doing a great job by getting reps, just like anything else. As you know, as a musician, as a journalist, on air. You need reps.
Yeah.
The repetition so that it becomes second nature and you get better. I remember when I first started doing the PA that the gentleman who hired me, who was vice president at the time, said to me that it takes a year before a PA guy actually gets his rhythm. And he was right. He was so right. I was so much better year 2. I was so much better year 3. And then I think that it all came together as it went on, but, so you need to get the reps. And I always remember something that Rod Thorne told me when he scouted players for the draft. And he says that you have to have an NBA talent. You have to be able to rebound or shoot or jump or defend. But you have to have an NBA talent. And so what I tell the kids in my class, who some want to be journalists, some want to go into the business, some think they want to go into the business, I tell them that there's one thing between liking sports and loving sports. You have to live sports. And if you really want to make that commitment, you have to look in the mirror and see what your talent is. What's your major league talent? Can you write? Can you talk? Is it your personality? Is it your organization? What's your major league talent? And then try to exploit that talent in order to get to the next level. So, I've been counseling kids for a long time, both not only here, but through Syracuse, where I went, and so on and so forth, that, you have to be honest with yourself. And you have to look and see what you do well. And you may think you do something well, but then you see your competition, you go, you know what? I'd like to do this, and I'm doing this okay, but I'm not as invested as that guy over there. But if you can say that you are, and you have the wherewithal and the passion, then you follow your path. But you need to be very honest with yourself to see what you do well, whatever it is: talking, producing, directing. What is it that you do well? Not just you, but anybody does well, and then try to exploit that. Try to follow that, because I remember a kid once came to me who wanted an internship, and he was involved in 10 different things. He was writing here, he was talking here, he was doing that, and it was crazy, it was confusing. I told him, I said, look, all right, now you've done your college stuff, now whittle this down. You can't do all this stuff when you get out of college. Figure out what you do well, and then come to some type of happy medium with yourself so that you don't go nuts. Just tailor it to what you do well. And so that would be a words of wisdom that I could possibly give you on this award-winning podcast.
Oh, yeah. Yet to be award-winning. But yes, thank you. And that really, I mean, honestly, just hearing you say all that, I took a lot from that, and that's really great advice. Gary, obviously thank you for all the great years at the Meadowlands. Just, I'll never forget it. As I said, my favorite time going to basketball games. You were a huge part of that. Thank you for all you do. Just the advice just now, all that great stuff, all the great memories. Thanks for coming on for a few minutes. Where can we follow you on Twitter? Where can we find your blog? All that good stuff.
My Twitter is @Sussez, SUSSSEZ, as in zebra. And as you mentioned early on, I actually I write a weekly sports humor column for More Sports Now. Yep. And I get my hands in a few things.
As always,
and
yes.
I got to tell you that the fact that you asked me to be on to talk about, the PA stuff and all that stuff means a tremendous amount to me because, when you're doing that stuff, really, it just comes so fast and there's so many egos involved, with so many people, players and coaches and front office and so on and so forth, that a lot of times you don't get a chance to really enjoy to the fullest of what you've done. It's just part of the job. Like I would go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then 6 o'clock I'm doing the game, and then 10 o'clock I'm in the locker room, and then I'm back in the car, and then the whole thing all over again, so on and so forth. And, it's very nice when I hear from people who enjoyed the games, because I love the game. And I think that's what that was, came across, and I thank you for the memories and for having me as a guest.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like I said, I'm privileged and honored, and one day, Gary, I hope to meet you in person, shake your hand, and thank you so much for all the memories. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Good luck with the podcast. Good luck with your career, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Everyone, that's Gary Sussman here on the Bob Culture Podcast. We'll see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for checking out this episode of the Bob Culture Podcast. Don't forget to support the show on patreon.com/Bob Culture Podcast for some great incentives. I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons JayCrow, Shannon, Krus, and of course Mike and Michelle Vermillion from Sledgepad Innovations. Sledgepad is the bass drum dampening system used by national acts like Pink, Goo Goo Dolls, Cher, Collective Soul, and a whole bunch more. Check them out at sledgepad.com. And of course, if you're a fan of the show, please subscribe on YouTube, check us out at podbean.com, and leave me a review at iTunes.